Welcome, everyone. I'm currently away on vacation and will be back Wednesday, October 22nd. Today, your host will be Larry Goldberg. Larry co-founded several companies and is now an active venture capital investor.
Joe, welcome.
It's great to be back.
Great to have you. So, what are we going to talk about today? I guess Analyst Day is, upon us, where the analysts are going to tell us just how badly Tesla did this quarter.
Well, not Dan Ives. We have always surprised Dan Ives.
Not Dan Ives. I think it's fair to say that Dan Ives has been a champion for some time. I think he's the lead champion. There are some pretty good analysts, but this is what Dan has to say leading into the into earnings. A major focus on Tesla's call will be RoboTaxi rollout and volume production. I mean, he's nailed it. This is it. If Elon will speak to this will have a huge impact on earnings, on stock price, not on earnings, but on stock price. And I think Dan's nailed it. I think this is the critical factor, right?
Yes, of course. I think the second part of his comment is also very important. The upcoming shareholder meeting and the pay package and Elon's confidence about it. Right? If Elon says, well, if I don't get it, I'm walking out, it's not going to be good. But if he says, we have high confidence that this is going to work, that is good. But for the first piece of the equation here, yeah, Dan is right. But I don't expect in earnings anything too bullish, because in order to be really bullish to move the stock, Elon cannot just say, yeah, I'm confident we're going to scale Optimus and Cybercab. It needs to be more specific. Right? He would have to say, well, we're expecting 50,000 Optimus or something, and I'm pretty confident Cybercab is going to scale in the second half of 2026 and then drop a number. And I don't think he's going to do that necessarily. So I don't think it's going to be bearish, but in order to move the stock upwards based on this, yeah, I think Elon is very positive and upbeat. That's a good thing. But the super bullish thing would be to drop actual numbers and times. And I don't think that's going to happen necessarily.
Right. And he's never done that in an earnings call. I think it's a question of not just his confidence in the outlook, but whether he is truculent in his responses to the analysts, or whether he is, whether he does it with humor and with some degree of fun. To me, that's always been the test of a earnings call, is his demeanor. And I think his demeanor is very important. And I think that if the confident Elon turns up, I think we'll have a good earnings call. If, however, he is not confident, if he has any degree of truculence, or I don't know how else to put it, but any other kind of representation, I don't think will go over well.
Yeah, the reason I agree. I think the reason why I'm bullish, we discussed in the last session, right? Why my trade is, kind of bullish on this earnings call, is that Elon is definitely he's back from politics. He's focusing on Optimus. He's tweeting or posting a lot on X, which is very technical, his tweets. So that's encouraging for me. And I think Elon is in fighting mode. Yeah. In action mode, right? Tesla is top priority for him right now because of November 6th. And so he's not there was some earnings calls that are very disappointing, not so much because Elon was depressed, but because you could tell he wasn't present in the call. He was like, yeah, whatever, this and that. He wasn't really paying too much attention. That's very bad for an earnings call. Yeah. So I think the odds that he will be very present and paying a lot of attention, because Tesla is his main focus right now, are very high.
Right. So I think that the opportunity for us in the earnings call is all about Elon's view of what's coming in October the 6th at the shareholders meeting. And in that regard, one of my great heroines, Kathy, had a lot to say. Kathy Woods of ARK Invest. And here she is, talking about what she sees coming. She said, having previously called the Delaware court's decision un-American, Kathy Wood continues to defend Elon Musk's 2018 pay package and urges the appeals court to do the right thing in the new brainstorm. So how do you think that is going to play come October the 6th?
Well, everyone who has followed the drama, first of all, what's very fascinating about this entire thing is that this obscure world of corporate governance and, Delaware Court of Chancery decisions is being dragged into the sunlight, which is very interesting because normally the general population never pays attention to something like this. And that includes the proxy vote, companies, Glass Lewis and ISS and these people. And this entire dark world of backroom deals and weird stuff that's happening in corporate America, where they always think they can get away with it, is now being dragged into the sunlight because Tesla is the world's biggest retail stock. People don't know that, right? It's over 10 million people own Tesla shares. That's insane. It's the biggest one. So largest retail shareholder base and also highest engaged shareholder base. So suddenly everyone starts to ask questions. How is it possible that some rando judge in Delaware can just take away the pay package, $50 billion from Elon, that everyone had agreed upon, that the board agreed on, the shareholders and Elon? And then he performed and met these crazy targets and they took it away from him. And in case the viewers didn't follow that whole drama, that completely blew up in Delaware's face. So it looks like the court, McCormick was an activist, political activist who basically wanted to, kick Elon. She had connections to Biden and Biden donors and everything. And that's the only explanation that I can come up with why she would make a crazy decision like that. It was completely insane, the decision. And ruined basically Delaware's reputation. And then you saw a giant outflux of companies out of Delaware. And we have to understand, Delaware in the United States is the state with the supposedly best established, court case law around corporate law. That's why most startups, Silicon Valley, C Corps, all kinds of companies incorporate in Delaware to have that legal safety. It's the pitch of Delaware. It's the big pillar of the economy that most American corporations incorporate in Delaware and LLCs, because you have more safety in your governance and court decisions. And she single-handedly destroyed that. And you saw a giant outflux of companies. Y Combinator, the biggest startup machine in the world, they gave the recommendation to all their startups, don't go there anymore. Andreessen Horowitz, all the lead VCs said, don't incorporate in Delaware anymore. It's insane what's happening there. And so then the governor got involved. It was a crazy story. Governor got involved, the Supreme Court got involved, and they're all struggling to reverse this decision. Of course, they don't admit that. They say, it has nothing to do with Tesla. We just do that because we have concerns. And so this is a very interesting story. And now it all comes down. Tesla moved to Texas because, no one was very happy with this. So they relocated the headquarters and also the legal framework to the state of Texas. And now we have this new pay package after Elon didn't get paid since 2018. He just didn't get paid. And now it's 2025, so 7 years. I think this is why this is so important. It's important because this is Tesla's new headquarters. Now we need a new pay package for Elon. Famously, it's this $1 trillion package in terms of how many shares he gets, assuming he can increase the value of Tesla to 8.5 trillion, right? And for us as shareholders, that's a pretty good deal. We had 1.5 trillion. If he adds $7 trillion in value, up from 1.5, so nearly 600%, 500, 600% on top, then he gets paid, roughly, what is it? I forgot the exact number, 12% or something. So basically the deal is, Larry, very simple. You give me $1,000 to invest. If I come back and give you $6,000, make it $6,000, are you willing to give me 12%? And you're going to say, of course. Are you kidding me?
Every day of the week. Every day.
Exactly. That's a stupidly obvious good deal for me.
But the one thing in that deal that you should mention is that I decided to give you the $1,000 to do that for me because you've done it before.
Because I already made you all that money before.
Exactly.
And you didn't pay me because you used a judge in Delaware to take away my payback.
Judge in Delaware stopped me from paying you.
But you wanted to pay me. So basically, Larry said, here's $100, turn it into 1,000, and you get your 5, whatever it was, 10%. I said, sure, Larry, let's sign it and have a board member also sign it. You're the shareholder, I'm the, and the board, to have full governance. Okay, Larry, do you really want this? Joe, do you really want this? Yes, yes. Okay, we agree too. Yes, yes, yes. Joe performs, makes Larry 10x. Larry wants to pay Joe. A random fourth person, the court says, no, that's illegal. That's too greedy. Joe's too greedy. Everyone complains. Larry says, what do you know? We had a deal. I say, yeah, we had a deal. Board says we had a deal. Court says, I don't care. You supported Trump, you're out.
But actually it gets worse. Because after that random fourth person said, no, you can't do this deal, you can't have this money, we went back. They came back to me and said, do you really want to give Joe this money? Because the court says you don't have to. I said, no, despite what that random court person said, I do want to give Joe the money. Then the random
because the court also said Larry didn't really know what he was doing and didn't really wanted to give Joe the money. And then Larry says, what? I wanted to because he made me 10 times my money.
Yeah. And now she came back and she said, no, even though you've been told what I said and you said you still want to give him the money, I'm telling you, you can't give him the money. That's how ridiculous
it's a complete betrayal. And that's what Kathy Woods, the great Kathy Woods, says. This is fundamentally un-American to tell Larry he's not allowed to pay Joe, even though both agreed and Larry wants to pay Joe and Joe made Larry the money. And a third party, a governance fiduciary body oversaw that and also agreed on it. And that's un-American. It's completely nanny state. It's saying all you guys are stupid. Larry is stupid, Joe is stupid, and the board is stupid. But I'm the judge. I'm saying you are not allowed to do any of these things that you just all agreed on and then wanted to do. And then did and wanted to pay.
And here's the interesting. By the way, Joe, did you see my post about the Supreme Court, the Delaware Supreme Court hearing? Because we've just in the last week or so, 2 weeks, we had the Supreme Court listen to the Tesla's appeal against this crazy judge. I don't know if you listened to it at all or heard my analysis of it and my replay of some of the moments, but it's quite clear that in the Delaware Supreme Court, there's a fairly high likelihood. In fact, Grok gives it a fairly high likelihood that it's going to be sent back to the court to readjust and to give the award to Elon. So there's a possibility that can still occur.
Yeah, and that's actually baked into the compensation package that occurs. It's being like offset, right? So I think there is a provision that if Elon gets awarded retroactively the original package, that offsets a piece of the future package or something like this.
Quite a smaller piece because the actual award that he's earned is nothing compared to what he may earn in the new package, right?
Yeah, I don't even know the exact numbers. It's not nothing. It's like a chunk because it's in terms of shares.
It's 600 million of the total trillion, right?
No, it's 50 billion. It's 50 billion in current value. And the trillion is future. It's 6 times more. So it is very significant. I think it's half of the compensation. Because it's 50 billion in current, it was 600 million in the original or something.
Yeah, and the new one is $1 trillion. So that
it was 2 billion original, but it's now worth 50 billion.
Oh, I see what you're saying. If he's restored, restored to the status ante quo, correct.
So I think it's 300 to 400 billion of the trillion, actually, because this is extrapolated in the future. The trillion is only $1 trillion once we 6x from now or 7x.
Yeah.
So it's like a big chunk, but Elon doesn't care, and then he gets it now.
So this is Kathy continuing. I think she's saying, she's consistent along the lines that you're talking about. Isn't it sad, if not damning, that institutional shareholders rely on proxy firms to tell them how they should vote? I mean, how many of these proxy firms, and there are only really 2 of them that count, but how many of them actually explain all of this to their clients? Index
Well, the
funds.
bad news is, I think the bad news here is we have to dive a little bit deeper into this dark world. That's why that's one of my big criticisms of the current financial system, and she says this, our investment system is broken. Let me just outline for the viewers what's happening. So if you own shares of Tesla or any other company, and there are votes on anything important in the company, you can vote your shares as a retail shareholder, right? But that is also true for anyone who owns shares. So that is also true for very large institutional investors. And now you might ask, if you're such a large institutional investor, don't you form your own opinions, right? If you are, for example, Ron Barron, doesn't he have his own opinion on Tesla? Yes, he has very strong opinions. Same with Warren Buffett or something, because they are smart investors. But there are also other types of investors. There are pension funds who are not smart investors, who don't know anything about all these things. And there are huge index funds. And these index funds, they don't care. They don't want to deal with any of the stocks, but they own massive amounts. And so what they do is, since they have to vote their shares and don't know what to do, they're hiring these proxy firms and saying, like, you know what, we have 500 shares because we have the S&P index. We do not care, but we own literally 5% of all companies and we need to vote. So we hire a firm like Glass Lewis or ISS, and they tell us how to vote. Okay, that's already very dubious, because what does it even mean? It gives enormous power over corporate America, over our world, to these weird advisor firms. And these advisor firms, of course, they have become very bureaucratic and corporate because they don't want to take any responsibility. They want to vote in a way that is hive mind compliant, right? Compliant with the culture. And I don't know where you guys stand on DEI and ESG and these things, invented by BlackRock. And ESG is basically this wheeled power lever, environmental, social, whatever stuff, where they rank companies based on some opaque stuff, which in the end turns out to be an enforcement function of Larry Fink and people like this, like BlackRock, who want power, right? And they basically say, well, we invent all these guidelines and all the other firms have to adhere to these guidelines because we made them up. And we say it's environmental and social, but what's behind it is all kinds of rules that are, for example, bad for companies like Tesla, for companies who are founder-led, who have a vision, who want to do big things. They're always on the chopping block for ESG, because ESG wants a world where everything is corporatized, no one has an opinion and no one is sticking out, and everyone says does what Larry Fink wants. And so these Glass Lewis and ISS firms, they are basically the executioners of this globalized weird hive mind thing, right? And they're saying, oh, it's not diverse enough. There's no diversity in Tesla. Let's rank it down, right? Oh, we need more women on the board or something. And Elon is pro-Trump. That's very bad. And then they start doing all these things. Okay, Elon cannot get paid. The directors need to get fired. And they do all these toxic stuff that has nothing to do with Tesla's vision or Tesla's promise. It has to do with completely alternative interests. And so when you consider how powerful these advisors are, Glass, Lewis, and ISS, these opaque, intransparent advisors, they can tell these giant funds how to vote on all the companies, on Lockheed Martin, on Boeing, on Tesla, on Apple, on Facebook, or Meta, Alphabet. They tell them how to vote. And that creates this forcing function. But in case you wonder sometimes what is corporate America doing, they are all kind of under this control. And I think it's very powerful that Tesla attracts so much interest of all kinds of people, of retail people, that we start to look into this. And the viewers start looking into that and understand what is even going on. Why are these giant funds just blindly voting what some random advisor says?
I think the key to that is that Tesla has got this incredible retail investor community, and it's probably of all the top companies in the market, they probably have the largest retail shareholder component of them all.
In the world.
So yes. I would say that that's a pretty important issue in terms of the power of the retail shareholders, but it applies to everybody, really. It applies to all companies, but this is what Kathy says about it, that when the shareholders first voted on the pay package, Tesla wasn't in any index, and the pay package won decisively. In the second vote, forced by this judge that we've discussed at length, Tesla was 1.2% of the S&P 500, and the pay package won decisively. Now Tesla's 2.4% of the S&P 500, not enough for index funds to swing the vote, and I believe that Tesla's new package will win decisively. Although proxy firm ISS, and that's the one you've been talking about, Joe, has recommended against the package, retail investors are likely to dominate the vote once again. America. So I take it you voted, Joe.
Of course. Yeah, I voted along the recommendations of the board. And yeah, it's pretty obvious. I hope everyone, can you still vote? I don't know. Make sure you always vote on these things. And what I can just tell you guys, like, look at ISS. So you understand, you have these giant index funds, giant pension funds. They're all too dumb to cast votes on all their shareholdings across the most important companies in the world. They outsource it to these people. ISS, by the way, is owned by Deutsche Börse, the German stock exchange, completely random. Glass Lewis, the other big one, is owned by a completely random private equity firm. Probably not a random private equity firm, but some private equity firm.
Exactly.
So, and Deutsche Börse, like, why can Deutsche Börse, who owns that thing, why can Deutsche Börse and this private equity firm dictate these two firms and cover basically 70, 80% of Americans' large corporations and dictate them what they can do? Like, what kind of governance is that? And that is called governance, right? It's the opposite. It's complete concentration of opaque power under the control of very random people. And, that's why it's so important and why I love Tesla so much, that retail investors and millions of people actually get engaged. And no one knew that before. And now people, because they care about Elon, about Optimus, about RoboTaxi, then they buy shares, then they get involved and they ask, wait a moment. Why can this random Deutsche Börse company dictate all of corporate America? Who gets fired? What CEO gets fired? What their compensation is? What the incentive system is? How the board composition looks like? Are you crazy? Who are these people? And then you look into, like, who's actually dictating these rules, like ESG. Oh, it's BlackRock. So why can Larry Fink order Tesla what to do and say Elon shouldn't get paid? That's outrageous. That's not governance. That's the opposite of governance, in my opinion.
It's interesting that Glass Lewis is owned by private equity. The question is, what is that private equity's interest in which stocks, and to what degree does Glass Lewis expose what they're told by their shareholders to do?
I mean, of course, they're going to say, well, we don't care at all. We just buy Glass Lewis because it's a good investment, but it's, of course, complete BS. That's like,
yeah.
I mean, you don't buy Glass Lewis because it's a great investment. It's, you buy it to have power.
Yeah, one of the things occurs to me that the market probably has better understanding of Tesla than almost any other company on the stock exchange, given the amount of retail shareholders, investigations and analysis and knowledge of the company, and the exposure that is given in public media. I mean, for the most part, every single article I've ever read on Tesla, most of the information that they contain that is true, we already learned, on X and on other sources from our retail buddies. And it's very often that they will quote X and quote people in the retail trade, those that are attempting to get accurate news. Those that just quote the three anonymous sources, I think they're just making it up. I think they're deciding what they think is happening, and then they'll attribute it to. I know it's not that fair for me just to call them all, lump them all as, liars and thieves, but I think they're all liars and thieves. That's my.
Well, it's also they are not truly engaged. When you just look at, it's kind of, if you have to combine how smart are these guys, how much time do they invest in research into Tesla, and how many other smart people who invest time into researching Tesla do they know? And then you compare it with the Tesla tubers, right? Compared with Jeff Lutz, with Søren Bird, right? with Stephen Mark Ryan, like with the whole crowd. We just know more than these people. It's that simple. And Joe Tegmeyer, like the whole crowd, that this tremendous intelligence crowd, right? That gets us the information. And that's why Tesla is so special. It's changing the rules. Suddenly the retail and the YouTubers are smarter than the analysts, think more about it, do more information exchange, are actually closer to Elon, funnily enough. So get this kind of information. And then we are starting, and then we have, of course, Alexandra Mertz. And we also have Kathy Woods, who's kind of on our side. So then this whole script flips to the extent that even a activist court in Delaware has huge problems. Even the governor of Delaware gets into trouble now. So I think it's incredibly encouraging, because my view of the new world, maybe of the old world too, but the new world is capital becomes the central currency, no pun intended, like the central political currency. And your vote is not that important and powerful. You still should vote, of course, but doing your investment decisions has way more sway over the country than your vote. And we see this more and more, right? All over the place. That's why the White House is now very influenced also by Silicon Valley, by Chamath, by David Sachs, by Elon, by the whole CEO crowd. They are influenced by our decisions as investors and shareholders. Thanks to Kathy Woods, we see now retail investors also getting into venture capital, which directly influences Silicon Valley. And so it's incredibly important that retail shareholders understand these things we are discussing right now, right? This impacts your stocks, it impacts your returns. And when it comes to Tesla, it impacts your future. Do you have RoboTaxis? Do you have Elon in charge, or some rando from GM? Does Mary Barra become the CEO of Tesla now because we kick out Elon? This is what they want.
She led. Mary led,
Exactly, she led. And that's, I guarantee you, if you ask Glass Lewis or ISS, would you rather have Mary Barra in charge of Tesla than Elon? They would, without hesitation, say, of course, she's so much better at governance. That's, the spirit we are buying here if we buy Glass Lewis and ISS.
And I think on that note, we'll end, because I think if ever we've said a wise word, that was a wise word.
It should be a warning to all of us. You have to remain vigilant. Watch Goldbird, the great Goldbird, and Cernbird, the twins.
And Joe Bhakti.
And of course, Herbert, the original.
Yeah.
And, it's very important that we don't let loose. There is a reason why we are excited about Tesla and Elon and this whole thing. And that is the gateway into understanding the whole world better, because these are key pillars of the world that were invisible before to most people.
From your lips. Thank you, Joe.
Thanks, Larry.
I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.